Desiring something that is unattainable should sometimes remain only a wish, because not every dream coming true is beneficial for one's well-being. This was a hard lesson I learned, and even now, I am consumed by regret when I think back to what happened a year ago. At the age of 36, I held the position of female sales director at one of New York's largest cosmetic companies. My husband, Jim, 62, owned the company I worked for. He was impressed by my skills and charmed by my personality from the very first day we met. To make a long story short, I managed to make him fall in love with me within a month, and he proposed marriage. Naturally, I said yes. Who wouldn't want to marry the wealthiest bachelor in town? Despite the 26-year age difference between Jim and me, we never faced any issues in our relationship. He had a high tolerance for my complaints, and we managed to keep arguments to a minimum, ensuring they never escalated into fights. He knew almost everything about me, my desires, dislikes, and even my hidden secrets. However, what he didn't know was that boredom was slowly devouring me, and I found myself stalking my longtime crush, Leo, on social media. Leo, 36, was a crush from my high school days, and my infatuation with him never waned. Just mentioning his name would make me squeal with excitement, because he possessed the most mesmerizing eyes and made me feel special with that one dance we shared during our prom night when nobody else wanted to be my date. That night completely changed my life. You see, you cannot easily forget the person who boosted your self-esteem during the most critical night of your teenage years. Therefore, it's heartbreaking to imagine how shattered I felt when I found out that Leo had married someone from his church 6 years ago. I genuinely believed that I was more attractive than his chosen partner, and I bet everyone was wondering why her. Perhaps that was why I immediately said yes to Jim's proposal a year later. When he asked me to marry him, I thought I no longer had a chance with Leo, or so I thought. One day, a former classmate messaged me with the news that Leo and his wife were getting a divorce. I almost dropped my coffee mug in disbelief upon hearing this good news. I could hardly keep my emotions in check. However, I knew that if I wanted a shot with Leo, now was the time to make a move. So, after a month, I reached out to him and engaged in some casual conversation. Eventually, I offered my support as he tried to move on with his life. Of course, I couldn't reveal to him how thrilled I was to be reconnected, but I felt as though I would be willing to sacrifice everything in my life just to be with him. This even included my marriage. Ridiculous, isn't it? But let's be honest, any woman would have done the same if they were in my position. After several weeks of chatting and getting nowhere, I decided to up my game and invited Leo to a dinner date during one of Jim's business trips. Surprisingly, he agreed. I wore my most beautiful dress from the depths of my closet, and adorned myself with the boldest shade of red lipstick on our date night. And before I knew it, we found ourselves in a hotel room together. We continued seeing each other for the next 3 months. I must admit, being with him felt incredibly satisfying, as it was everything I had ever envisioned. However, there was something that felt off. For one, Leo confided in me that his business was struggling, and he needed $100,000 to cover his losses. A week later, he asked to borrow my Bentley for a week to impress potential investors. He also requested another $100,000, claiming it was for his mother's necessary surgery. I continued to fulfill Leo's requests, but deep down, I knew that he was only interested in my money. Little did I know that Jim had been aware of everything from the beginning. He knew about my activities on social media, day in and day out. He was aware of my incessant stalking of Leo. He even knew which dress I had worn on my first encounter with Leo. He was well acquainted with the fact that Leo had been my crush since high school, but he had never addressed the matter with me. On all the business trips he took in the past, they were mostly opportunities for him to determine whether I would engage in any illicit affairs while he was away. I passed the test for the first 4 years, but in the 5th year, he finally caught me in the act, indulging in exactly what I had fantasized about. Jim didn't confront me at all. Upon his return home, he completely ignored me, walking past me as though I didn't exist. I knocked on his door until my knuckles bled, desperately hoping for him to open up. The messages I sent on various chat apps went unnoticed. I was desperate to communicate and beg for his forgiveness, but it was too late. The following day, my employees gathered in my office, watching a video of me kissing Leo. Fearing that more incriminating footage would follow, I hastily grabbed the remote and turned off the monitor. On that very same day, I received a termination letter without any severance pay, citing unauthorized financial withdrawals. The bank manager called to inform me that my accounts had been closed, and when I arrived home in the evening, all my belongings were placed outside the gate. Unbelievably, I had been cast out of my own home after providing him with 5 years of pleasure in bed. Was I that terrible of a wife that he couldn't treat me with any sense of decency? Did he really expect me to believe that he had never been involved with other women while he was away? And now, a year later, I find myself with no money, no family, and nowhere to turn. I have been desperately trying to reconnect with Jim, but every time I get close, he shuts the door in my face. If only I could turn back time, I would never have gotten involved with Leo. He wasn't worth sacrificing my entire life for. My name is Dave, and I am currently dating my girlfriend Kelly. Our story began when I accidentally overheard Kelly having an honest conversation with her closest friend. We have been together for about 2 years now, and I have been contemplating popping the question and asking her to marry me. Kelly is the kind of woman who often goes unnoticed in a crowd. At first glance, you might not realize just how beautiful and loving she truly is. She tends to hide her figure under loose-fitting clothes, because she doesn't like the attention her nearly perfect physique attracts. But if you are fortunate enough to get to know her on a deeper level, you will quickly discover the true depth of her beauty and warmth. Our paths crossed at a New Year's Eve party hosted by a mutual friend. Little did I know that this chance encounter would lead to a beautiful love story. We discovered that we had many common interests, and even though she didn't immediately captivate me, I mustered up the courage to ask her out after a week. We dated for a few months, and one evening she surprised me by coming over to my place. Wanting to make the night special, I prepared a delicious dinner for her. As we sat on the couch watching a movie, our sweet gestures turned into passionate kisses. In the blink of an eye, we found ourselves in my bed, and I was taken aback by Kelly's uninhibited nature. She displayed fearlessness and a sense of adventure, pushing the boundaries of our intimacy. I was overwhelmed, desperately trying to keep up throughout the night, but our bond grew stronger than ever after that night. Of course, our relationship faced its fair share of difficulties. I have a tendency to forget or overlook things, unintentionally causing Kelly pain. On the other hand, she, being a typical woman, occasionally did things that frustrated me. We didn't live together primarily due to the influence of her parents. Despite the depth of our connection, she believed that moving in together would complicate things with her family. Out of my deep love and respect for her, I accepted her decision and never pressured her to reconsider. But one day, I overheard a conversation between Kelly and her friend that left me feeling fearful and guilty. It was clear that I struggled to remember important dates, such as anniversaries and Valentine's Day. It often took me days to realize my mistakes. After an intimate evening together, Kelly left me. While I was in the bathroom, she apparently called Gina, leaving me in a state of shock as I had thought our relationship was thriving. She spoke about how I had forgotten Valentine's Day, causing her to doubt my feelings and wondering if I was merely keeping her around. A profound sense of responsibility washed over me. Kelly expressed disappointment, citing my poor memory as the reason for her doubt. She questioned why she needed an attractive guy who couldn't even remember important dates like Valentine's Day and threatened to end our relationship if I forgot again. There was a moment of silence that seemed significant to Gina. Reflecting on Gina's support, Kelly wished she had sought her advice earlier. Doubtful of Gina's sincerity, our relationship grew strained. Kelly believed that Gina thought she deserved someone better than me. I couldn't recall a single positive thing Gina had ever said about me in the 2 years we had known each other. I felt as though Gina was trying to convince Kelly to leave me, intensifying my anger towards her. Instead of acknowledging my shortcomings in dating and relationships, I chose to blame Gina. Kelly continued, emphasizing that the issue extended beyond just Valentine's Day. The gaps in my memory were becoming increasingly unpleasant for her, constantly having to remind me of important dates. Sometimes, she expressed feeling like nothing more than an object of satisfaction, easily forgotten. After a lengthy conversation, Kelly said goodbye to Gina, and it became clear to me that Gina had hidden motives. My dislike for her grew even stronger. Who did she think she was, trying to disrupt my relationship with Kelly? As anger consumed me, subsequent events unfolded. Later that day, after leaving Kelly at her house, I sought advice from a friend named Mike, hoping he could offer some guidance. Unfortunately, he wasn't much help. It seemed as though he was looking forward to Kelly and me breaking up so he could make his move. Then, Sam came to mind. Although we hadn't spoken in a while, I believed he might have the answers to my current predicament. As I prepared to propose to Kelly, I found myself desperately clinging to our relationship. I had planned to bring up the topic after a shower on that momentous day, but I accidentally overheard a conversation that forced me to abandon my plans. Luckily, Sam proved to be a true friend, providing invaluable advice and support. Aware of my unreliable memory, I made an effort to write down as many details as I could before leaving his apartment. Afterward, I took immediate action to secure a future with Kelly, recalling her favorite restaurant and quickly booking a table. Remembering Kelly's favorite restaurant, I quickly made a reservation. It occurred to me that Gina had mentioned this place as well. Looking back, I wondered if Gina was bragging about her boyfriend taking her to such a fancy establishment, insinuating that I couldn't do the same for Kelly. Nevertheless, I wasted no time in securing the booking and making the necessary prepayment for our table. While shopping for a special gift for Kelly, I stumbled upon a beautiful brooch. However, at the jewelry store, I couldn't resist perusing a collection of wedding rings and ended up selecting an exquisite engagement ring adorned with diamonds. Its hefty price tag compelled me to visit the bank and transfer money from my savings to make an immediate purchase. Following that, I purchased a new suit with the assistance of a friendly salesman. Recognizing my lack of fashion sense, I relied on the seller's expertise to help me make the right choice, creating a stylish image. Upon exiting the fitting room, I was pleasantly surprised by the whispers of several women complimenting my appearance. Despite their kind words, a sense of unease lingered within me. To overcome it, I decided to buy another new suit and visit the barber shop for a fresh hairstyle. This was quite a challenging decision for me as I usually preferred a low-maintenance look. However, Sam strongly supported it, believing it was necessary. Later that evening, Kelly couldn't resist complimenting my new hairstyle. Clearly appreciating the transformation, she inquired about the reason behind the change, and I casually explained that I thought she would like it and mentioned being tired of my old hairstyle. Kelly appeared intrigued by the sudden change, leading her to question the significance of being tired of the old look. Her unexpected line of questioning caught me off guard, making me wonder if she and Gina had spent too much time together. Sensing a certain tension between them, despite usually feeling confident around Kelly, I found myself feeling nervous and chose to keep my thoughts to myself. It felt as though I were asking someone out for the first time, especially since I was inviting her to a special Valentine's Day dinner. My nerves heightened as I felt the weight of expectations and pressure during our conversation. Kelly then inquired about my well-being and questioned if I was inviting her to a romantic dinner. I confirmed and asked what was so unusual about us going out together, emphasizing that it was the first time I had asked her out on this particular day. I expressed my love for her and clarified that I simply wanted to show her. I had some plans, but I suppose I can cancel them. When I asked Kelly about her plans for Valentine's Day, she mentioned nothing special, just going to a party with Gina. However, since I invited her, she agreed to go with me. Curious about Gina and the party, I asked Kelly if there was something she wanted to tell me, expressing my concern about what might be going on between us. Kelly then addressed my recent concerns, asking what had been bothering me lately. She reminded me of her long history of dating Gina and mentioned that, assuming I wasn't going to ask her out on Friday, she had made plans with Gina. She advised me not to take it too seriously, but I sensed a hint of disappointment in her tone. I had to admit that I might have seemed jealous, which was the truth. I was also afraid of losing the person I loved most in the world. That evening, Kelly decided to come home early, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to end our relationship. Despite her usual closeness, she seemed distant. Reflecting on the week, I realized we hadn't spent much time together, and on Friday morning, everything seemed to go wrong. I received a call from the restaurant at work, informing me that my order had been canceled. Some wealthy individual had booked the entire restaurant, demanding the cancellation of all other reservations. Despite my fiery arguments, my efforts were in vain. The waiter remained resolute in canceling the order and refunding the money. Panic-stricken, I desperately searched for alternative options, but all the seats were occupied. Filled with despair, I reluctantly accepted the idea of a cozy, romantic dinner at home. However, my hopes were shattered when an unexpected second phone call brought devastating news. There had been a fire in my house, and the apartment directly beneath mine had been reduced to ashes. My belongings, including cherished clothes and personal items, were soaked and destroyed beyond recognition. I was left with no choice but to search for a new place to live. As I sat back in my chair at work, a wave of emptiness washed over me. In a matter of minutes, my entire life had crumbled. Salvaging the day seemed impossible. A sudden realization struck me that the ring I had planned to propose with was still sitting on the dresser in my now ruined apartment. I immediately left work and headed home, or rather, what was left of it. The once cozy room had transformed into a vast, dark abyss. All of my belongings and clothes were completely destroyed and reduced to ashes. It was a devastating sight to see the empty spot where my chest of drawers once stood, now revealing a large hole leading to the basement. I sat on the curb, burying my head in my hands, contemplating the imminent troubles that awaited me. Little did I know, the extent of the worsening situation was beyond comprehension. In the midst of my distress, I noticed Kelly driving by in a Jeep belonging to someone I had considered a friend. She quickly averted her gaze, witnessing my state of despair on the roadside. I realized I had not only lost her but my supposed friend had taken advantage of the situation. Feeling shattered, I decided to search through the wreckage. To my surprise, I discovered the ring, safely concealed in a box. Although it provided a small glimmer of hope, I pondered its significance within my current predicament. Seeking refuge, I visited my parents' house in the suburbs to freshen up and regain composure. I still had some outdated but suitable clothing there. However, their constant chatter irritated me, prompting me to escape into the city. Eventually, I found myself at Sam's place. As soon as he saw me, Sam and his wife warmly welcomed me, expressing genuine concern for my well-being. I shared the events of the day with Sam, and we ended up having dinner together. During our meal, the phone unexpectedly rang. Sam handed it to me, emphasizing its importance as Gina's call. As I answered, a flood of emotions overwhelmed me: anger, disappointment, and deep resentment. Bitterly, I accused Kelly, believing she called to mock me and questioning her happiness. The mere thought of my true love being with someone else made my world crumble. I even insinuated that she might have been involved in the destruction of my home. In response, Gina seemed bewildered and denied any malicious intent. She expressed surprise about my change in behavior and reassured me that Kelly still loved me, regardless of my doubts. Gina conveyed sympathy for my recent misfortune and explained that she had only recently learned about the fire at my house. I couldn't comprehend how the news had reached her so late. I recounted seeing Kelly driving by in the same car while I sat on the side of the road, and how she tried to conceal herself when she noticed me, overwhelmed by anger. I abruptly ended the call despite Sam and his wife's attempts to console me. Thanking them, I left, succumbing to the allure of heavy drinking. Sam understood the gravity of my situation. I found solace in a familiar VC bar I used to frequent before Kelly entered my life. The irony of its initials now serving as a reminder of an unforgettable event struck me profoundly. Sitting at the bar, I drowned my sorrows in alcohol, disregarding the bartender's reluctance to serve me beyond what was reasonable. By this point, I was heavily intoxicated and barely able to contain my anger. Kelly and Gina entered the bar, Kelly with red, tear-filled eyes, and Gina exuding fury. However, their presence ceased to affect me. Indifferent to everything, I relished in the final glass as the bartender avoided me. Sensing my disappointment, Kelly approached me, attempting to embrace me, but I forcefully pushed her away. Consumed by fury at her audacity, I confronted her, questioning whether her connection to Mike and their presence in his Jeep that day was the cause. Offended, I expressed regret at catching her in what seemed like infidelity, attempting to find reason amidst the chaos. Kelly insisted that my intoxication clouded my judgment, suggesting we go to her place to discuss everything. Caught between mixed emotions, I stubbornly declared that we would either talk there or not at all. Despite my intoxicated and enraged state, my love for her ran deep, preventing me from muttering such a vile word as trash. Deep down, I believed she had betrayed me. For the first time, Gina approached me, expressing disappointment and highlighting that things might have been different had I not been consumed by intoxication and despair. She urged me to let go of my ego, assuring me of Kelly's adoration and my role in pushing her away. Gina advised me to rest and have a calm conversation in the morning. At that moment, I acknowledged the wonderful presence Gina had been in my life for the past 2 years. She had always envisioned Kelly and me together, even amidst the negativity I had been surrounded by. With a final sip, I emptied my glass and reached for the last one on the bar. The room seemed to spin, and a wave of numbness washed over me. Due to the excessive consumption of alcohol, my consciousness began to falter until I ultimately lost it. The bartender and the girls kindly helped carry me to Kelly's car. When I woke up the following morning, a pounding headache greeted me. Slowly, I maneuvered myself out of the bed and made my way to the bathroom. After some time, I regained enough composure to get dressed. To my surprise, my clothes had been washed and neatly folded, waiting for me on a chair in the corner of the room. As I put on my clothes, I realized my pockets were empty. When I entered the kitchen for a drink, I spotted Gina and Kelly waiting for me. Gina astutely noticed that I was not in a good mood, surprising me with her insight. I had expected her to revel in my misfortune. Kelly, on the other hand, remained silent, her gaze fixed on the table. Annoyed, I confronted them, expressing my displeasure and mentioning how Kelly had been sleepless the night before. When Gina asked if I was okay with it, I firmly conveyed that I was far from okay. I recounted the troubles they had caused the previous night, the sight of my apartment on fire and the frustration of seeking refuge in a questionable bar. Gina revealed that Kelly had contacted my parents, found Sam, and discovered my whereabouts. They had checked several places and finally found me in a shocking state. Frustrated, I questioned why they had brought me to that place. Accusing Kelly of possibly taking pleasure in my misfortune and disrespecting me, I assumed my parents had asked her to take care of me. Looking at Kelly for the first time, I noticed her shoulders shaking and tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed, I sank into a chair and gazed at the person who held my heart. Gina, with a stern expression, pulled out a receipt for dinner, a recent clothes purchase certificate, and a card box containing a ring from her pockets. Annoyed, she mentioned finding them before washing my clothes and urged me to explain their significance to Kelly. Embarrassed, I looked at the receipts in the box, feeling my face flush with embarrassment. Kelly had stopped crying and was now looking at me intently. Wanting to avoid further embarrassment, I sought answers from Kelly, why she had gone with Mike and why she had hidden her face. Dismissively, she replied that I wouldn't understand. Determined, I challenged her to try me and insisted on knowing what was going on. Kelly explained that Mike had picked her up after hearing about the fire, taking her to check if anything could be salvaged. When she saw me in a serious condition on the side of the road, she instinctively decided to invite me to her place. She clarified that it was an impulsive action and that she simply wanted to help. Kelly pleaded for me to stop being unreasonable, emphasizing her care for me. Even though she believed she cared more than I deserved, Gina admonished me, pointing out that Kelly was also struggling. It dawned on me that I had completely misinterpreted the events of the past 24 hours. I realized that Gina hadn't tried to ruin my relationship with Kelly and acknowledged her support for both of us. I recognized the unfairness and insult in my baseless accusations. Gina encouraged us to focus on the love and connection that united us all, rather than negativity and suspicion. She emphasized the importance of trust and open communication. I understood that they might feel protective of Kelly, but I wanted them to know that my intentions had always been sincere and respectful. I genuinely cared about Kelly and wanted her happiness. I hoped they could see this and put aside any doubts or hostility they had towards me. I had tried to reconcile the two of them. Kelly had been considering ending our relationship and continuing with Mike. She felt that Mike remembered important dates and details that I often forgot. I wanted to explain myself. Kelly truly loved me, but she had been feeling that my feelings for her were not reciprocated. She got the impression that we were on the brink of breaking up. I didn't agree with her perspective and expressed my thoughts. If I hadn't been so inattentive to important details, both of us would probably be much happier now. It was incredibly difficult for me to protect them, especially when I acted foolishly. Like yesterday, I couldn't help but feel like a complete idiot in that moment. The feeling still haunted me. It suddenly struck me that Gina had been on my side all along. Reflecting on my past mistakes, I realized how negativity had clouded my judgment. always assuming the worst in every situation. As I sat there, I was overwhelmed by a deep sense of foolishness. While holding the receipt in my hands, I confirmed that our dinner reservation at Del Rio's restaurant had been canceled because a wealthy man had booked the entire place. I had hoped to invite Kelly to dinner there last night, wanting to make the evening unforgettable for her. Despite Gina dismissing Del Rio's, I explained that it was the best place in the city. I mentioned that I remembered it was Valentine's Day and had even made a reservation, but it was canceled. However, I emphasized to Kelly that this was the most important aspect for me. I shared the efforts I made to buy my new suit, noting Gina's shocked expression at the idea of me shopping for clothes. I admitted that I had always been a simple man in blue jeans and a t-shirt. Both Gina and Kelly were stunned, and I couldn't help but enjoy their reactions, though I wished it had happened under more favorable circumstances. When I held the ring, memories flooded back, inspiring me to kneel in front of Kelly, taking her hands, admitting my recent unease. I confessed that I might not be the most impressive ladies' man and struggle with important dates, but one thing was certain: I deeply loved Kelly. Placing the box in her hands and intertwining our fingers, I gathered courage and popped the question, asking her to marry me. Gina was stunned by the unexpected question, and tears streamed down Kelly's face. The room filled with silence as I looked at Gina briefly, and then returned to Kelly, unsure of what to say. With a gentle gesture, Kelly leaned over to me and carefully opened the box in front of her, revealing a ring of brilliant radiance, not inferior to her beauty. Trembling hands carefully removed the ring from the soft case and with extreme precision put it on the fourth finger of the left hand. The ring fit flawlessly, as if it was meant to be. I was stunned by the statement of the jeweler, as he assured me that in order for the ring to fit her, it would need to be. I was stunned by the statement of the jeweler as he assured me that in order for the ring to fit her, it would need to be resized. But my surprise quickly turned into joy when Kelly wrapped her arms around me and pulled me to her. She expressed her acceptance, saying that she would marry me, and her hot tears touched my cheek. Embracing her tightly, I observed Gina, who was also crying. We hugged Kelly and shared passionate kisses. Kelly's eyes were open and filled with a searching look that I couldn't quite understand. Suddenly, Gina pulled Kelly away from her and embraced her tightly, pouring out her heart in her arms. Both were crying and gazing at the ring, tears streaming down their faces. I briefly sat up from my seat but immediately sat back down, watching them whirl around the room, their voices filled with delight and surprise. Remaining in my place, I suddenly heard the phone ring. The answering machine went off, and a familiar voice filled the room. Mike was on the line, expressing his concerns about me not being right for Kelly, especially after what happened yesterday. He suggested inviting her to dinner to talk. Before Kelly or I could react, Gina quickly picked up the phone and interjected, informing Mike that Kelly wasn't interested in him or any other guy. She asserted that Kelly had found someone special, telling him to leave. Angered, Gina abruptly ended the conversation and burst out laughing. Kelly joined in, and eventually, I found myself laughing too. Gina's unexpected anger towards Mike surprised me, but it became clear that she had some sympathy for me, or at least tolerated my presence. Later in the evening, as we lay together in Kelly's bed, she rested her head on my chest. The soft light illuminated the engagement ring she was looking at, creating a gentle atmosphere. Even in the dim lighting, the ring continued to shine. Straining my eyes, I noticed a single tear glistening in her eye. Concerned, I cautiously asked Kelly what was bothering her. After a moment of hesitation, she quietly replied that nothing was bothering her at all. In fact, everything seemed incredibly right and perfect. With irresistible tenderness, she uttered the three important words, "I love you, Dave." Soon, we were eagerly preparing for a modest wedding. Kelly was happy. A smile never left her face. Gina helped my future wife in everything. She was always with us. I realized how much I was wrong about Gina. She turned out to be a very good person. Sometimes I felt very ashamed that I thought she wanted us to break up with Kelly. As for Mike, he tried to contact my dear Kelly more than once, but fortunately for me, she avoided any conversations and meetings with him. I was more confident than ever in her love and loyalty. Shortly before the wedding, Kelly pleased me with very exciting news for me. In the evening, she stayed late after work, which greatly worried me, but not for long. Returning an hour later, Kelly said that I would become a father, and she would become a mother. From happiness and confusion, I was speechless. I just couldn't figure out for a few seconds if these were real words or a prank. I understood alone I was happier than her. My dear Kelly and I had a bright and happy future. Just as I dreamed, my life has turned into a continuous happiness. Gina also pleased us with wonderful news. Her boyfriend finally decided and made her an offer to become his wife.